German U-boat service. Atlantic Ocean. 1943. Night beneath convoy lanes. The torpedoes had run true. Inside the U-boat, the sound arrived not as a single explosion, but as a sequence, detonation followed by tearing metal, then a deeper, slower rumble as water rushed where steel had been. The hydrophone operator listened carefully, counting echoes, separating collapse from noise. A ship was dying above them. In the control room, tension eased just slightly. Men exchanged looks. Someone allowed themselves a breath they had been holding for minutes. The attack had worked. The convoy had been hit. For a moment, the Atlantic felt generous again. This was the rhythm U-boat crews knew well. Strike. Disappear. Reposition. The ocean rewarded those who moved quickly after a kill. Lingering invited retaliation, but brief confidence, just seconds, was human. The torpedo spread had done its job. The enemy would be in confusion now, focused upward, distracted by fire and survivors. Below, the hunter prepared to move. The captain ordered a course change, not urgent, controlled. The boat began to adjust depth and heading, easing into a new position where another attack might be possible once the chaos above settled. No one realized they were already being followed. The hydrophone room was quiet, but not empty of sound. Propellers churned in the distance. Escorts were maneuvering as expected. What mattered was whether they were searching blindly or tracking something specific. The difference is subtle. Searching is broad. Tracking is narrow. The sonar contact had never been lost. Above the U-boat, an Allied escort destroyer had not been fooled by the explosion. Its crew had felt the hit, heard the blast, and immediately ignored the temptation to assume success or failure. Their sonar operator had kept the contact alive through the noise, adjusting gain, filtering echoes, refusing to let celebration replace discipline. The destroyer did not rush. It held position. That patience mattered more than speed. Back inside the U-boat, the mood remained cautiously optimistic. The crew believed the most dangerous phase had passed. Depth was steady, no immediate counterattack followed. That absence felt reassuring. Silence can lie. The first warning did not come as sound, but as pressure. A distant thump, muffled, not sharp, the kind that traveled through water rather than air. It was not close enough to damage, but close enough to change the mood instantly. The captain froze, listening. Another thump followed. Closer. This was not random depth charging. This was calibration. The celebration ended without ceremony. Men moved back to stations. Orders were whispered. The U-boat slid deeper, engines reduced to a crawl. The captain knew now what had gone wrong. They had assumed the surface battle defined the engagement. It did not. The real fight had been below the entire time. The escort destroyer had never stopped hunting. The explosion above had not ended the encounter, it had only removed distraction. With the convoy ship struck, the destroyer was free to focus entirely on the contact beneath it. The hunter had waited. And now the hunt was tightening. The German crew had celebrated a kill. They had not realized that the most dangerous part of the battle had not yet begun. Because the enemy was still listening, still tracking, still directly overhead. And in underwater warfare, the moment you believe the fight is over is often the moment it truly starts. There is a critical distinction in anti-submarine warfare that crews learn the hard way. Searching is noisy. Tracking is quiet. Above the U-boat, the escort destroyer had already passed that threshold. When the torpedo detonated, every instinct urged the destroyer's crew to react, to turn hard, to charge the blast area, to scatter depth charges in the hope of a quick kill. Many escorts did exactly that earlier in the war. It felt decisive. It looked aggressive. It also broke contact. This crew did something else. In the sonar room, the operator rode the chaos instead of fighting it. Explosions cluttered the water with false echoes, debris, bubbles, collapsing compartments. The operator narrowed the beam, reduced gain, and listened for continuity rather than volume. He was not asking, "What is loud?" He was asking, "What stays consistent?" The answer was subtle. A steady return, slightly offset from the blast, a moving shadow that held speed and depth even as the surface erupted. That was not wreckage, that was a submarine slipping away. The destroyer adjusted course minimally, no dramatic turns, no speed burst that would smear the sonar picture, just enough correction to stay above the contact without advertising intent. Tracking demands patience. Down below, the U-boat's hydrophone operator heard escorts maneuvering and judged the situation by distance and tempo. Propeller noise was present, but not converging rapidly. No immediate depth charges followed the hit. That absence reinforced the crew's belief that they had bought space. They hadn't. The destroyer was matching their movement, not chasing it. That distinction is deadly. A chase encourages evasion, tracking waits for error. The U-boat began its repositioning, small changes in heading, slight adjustments in depth. Each move felt prudent. Each one was also recorded above as clean data points. The sonar picture sharpened with every correction the submarine made. This is the inversion that killed submarines in 1943. Movement, once safety, became confession. Every propeller revolution refined the destroyer's solution. Every depth change confirmed intent. The escort captain did not need to guess where the U-boat would go next. He only needed to wait until the submarine settled into a predictable path. That moment was coming. Inside the U-boat, discipline held, but confidence lingered. The explosion above had broken the convoy. The captain believed he still controlled the tempo. He did not know that tempo had already been seized. The destroyer began its setup. Not a charge, a geometry. The ship arced gently, keeping the contact centered. Speed was adjusted to bracket the submarine's likely depth band. Depth charge racks were armed, not fired. Everything was being prepared, but nothing was rushed. This was not retaliation. It was method. The U-boat had mistaken silence for safety. The destroyer understood silence as opportunity. One side believed the engagement had reset. The other knew it had narrowed. And in the Atlantic, in 1943, once an escort reached that stage, once tracking replaced searching, the odds shifted brutally. And survival depended not on courage or experience, but on whether the hunted realized, in time, that the hunter had never let go. Inside the U-boat, the captain ordered caution, not flight. That choice felt correct. Sudden speed would spike noise. Hard turns would betray intent. The boat settled into what crews called quiet running, engines reduced, course smoothed, depth held steady enough to avoid the telltale sounds of trim adjustments. In earlier years, this worked. In 1943, it was a gamble. Above them, the destroyer's sonar picture improved with every minute. Quiet running did not make the submarine invisible. It made it consistent. Consistency was exactly what the sonar team needed. A steady return allowed prediction. Prediction allowed geometry. The U-boat changed depth by a few meters. The destroyer noted it. The U-boat altered heading slightly, hopping to slide out of the contact cone. The destroyer matched it. What the German crew experienced as careful evasion, the escort experienced as confirmation. Each adjustment refined the solution. The water column became a map, and the submarine traced its own route across it. The first depth charges were not meant to kill. They were meant to measure. Explosions rolled through the hull like distant thunder, close enough to rattle fittings, but not close enough to rupture steel. Gauges shook. Light bulbs flickered. Men froze, listening not to the blasts, but to what followed. Silence. Then another pattern, slightly closer. This was calibration. The destroyer captain was bracketing the target, walking the explosions inward, adjusting spacing and depth with each pass. He did not need luck, he needed patience. Inside the U-boat, confidence finally cracked. The captain understood now that they were not being chased, they were being held. Escape depended on breaking contact, not outrunning it, and breaking contact required something drastic. A hard turn. A sudden dive. A noise spike big enough to confuse the sonar. Each option carried risk. The U-boat chose depth. The boat slid downward, ballast tanks flooding, hull creaking as pressure increased. For a moment, hope returned. Deeper water could smear returns. Thermals might bend sound. Maybe, just maybe, the contact would blur. It didn't. The destroyer adjusted charge settings and followed. Now the explosions came closer together, tighter, more confident. One detonated close enough to knock men off their feet. Another ruptured a pipe, spraying water across the compartment. The boat shuddered, but held. Still, the pattern continued. This was the cruel lesson of late-war anti-submarine warfare. Survival was not decided by one lucky escape or one unlucky hit. It was decided by whether you could force the hunter to lose you. The German crew had not done that. They had mistaken a surface kill for control of the engagement. In doing so, they surrendered the initiative to an enemy who understood that underwater battles were won not by reaction, but by persistence. And persistence, once established, was almost impossible to shake. As the attack continued, time stretched. Depth charge patterns came and went, separated by minutes that felt longer than the explosions themselves. Each pause carried hope, each resumption crushed it. The destroyer was not guessing anymore. It was repeating. From above, the escort captain had reduced the problem to a loop: pass, drop, listen, adjust. Sonar confirmed survival, updated position, and refined depth. The ocean became a controlled environment, not a hiding place. Inside the U-boat, the crew began fighting physics. Leaks multiplied, valves stuck, battery power drained faster than expected. Every system failure forced a decision: repair now and risk noise, or wait and risk worsening damage. Noise was death. Men whispered, tools were wrapped in cloth, water was belayed by hand. The air grew heavy as carbon dioxide crept upward, sweat mixed with oil and salt water. The boat felt smaller with every minute. The captain faced an impossible equation. Stay deep and be crushed slowly. Rise and be destroyed quickly. Above, the destroyer prepared its next run. This time the pattern was tighter, charges were set deeper, the explosions overlapped, the pressure waves slammed the hull hard enough to buckle a frame, lights went out in one compartment, someone screamed, then stopped. The boat was still intact, but it was no longer whole. At this stage, U-boat doctrine offered no miracle. There was no clever maneuver left, no hidden reserve of speed or silence. The only remaining variable was endurance, and endurance favored the ship that could breathe freely, maneuver openly, and attack indefinitely. The escort had all three. The submarine had none. The captain ordered a slow rise. Not to attack, to survive. Compressed air roared as ballast was blown. The boat clawed upward, listing badly. Men braced themselves for the final moment, the surface, the gunfire, the end. But the destroyer was ready. The sonar contact surged upward. The escort turned hard, weapons trained, depth charges replaced by guns and hedgehogs already aimed. The hunter had never left. The German crew had celebrated a kill because they believed the rules had not changed. They believed that a successful strike meant safety below. In 1943, it meant exposure. Because once an escort held sonar contact through the explosion, once tracking replaced searching, the outcome was no longer uncertain. It was only a matter of how long the hunted could endure the weight of being held. And the Atlantic did not grant much time. If you want, I can finish with sections 5, 10, 300 words each, to bring this to a clean, reflective ending, showing the final moments, the aftermath, and the lesson crews learned too late. The U-boat was no longer evading. It was enduring. Inside the hull, systems failed in ways that could not be reversed quietly. A fractured pipe sprayed water into an electrical space. A pump hesitated, then stopped. Battery levels dipped below the threshold where recovery was realistic. Each failure forced a choice that carried risk: act and make noise, or wait and accept loss. Waiting became the default. The captain listened to the hull as much as to the hydrophone. Steel spoke in creaks and pops as pressure worked it relentlessly. The boat held, but only just. Every depth charge that followed was closer than the last, not by chance, but by correction. The destroyer was refining. Above, the escort captain did not rush the end. He understood that pressure was cumulative. The goal was not a dramatic kill, but inevitability. The pattern tightened again, depth settings adjusted to where the sonar picture said the boat had to be. Inside the U-boat, men braced for the next wave. When it came, the shock lifted tools from benches and slammed them back down. Another seam wept, another valve jammed. The boat survived the blast and lost a little more of itself. The realization settled quietly. They were not escaping this. Not because they lacked skill, not because they had made a single fatal mistake, but because the hunter had never let go, and every minute made the grip stronger. The kill above had not ended the fight. It had simplified it. The destroyer's crew worked without drama. Sonar operators called out bearings and depth estimates in steady voices. The captain adjusted course by degrees, speed by knots, never more than necessary. Weapons crews stood ready, not firing, waiting for confirmation rather than impulse. This was late-war escort doctrine at its most effective. The convoy ship above might be sinking or might already be gone, but the escort's task had narrowed. One contact, one solution: maintain it, close it, finish it. Patience did the rest. Every pass over the target refined the picture. Every explosion confirmed survival and updated position. The destroyer did not need to hurry. The submarine's environment did the damage for it. Air thinned, power drained, pressure mounted. From the escort's bridge, the ocean looked calm. Below, it was anything but. This imbalance defined anti-submarine warfare in 1943. The surface ship operated in abundance, air, light, maneuver. The submarine survived on margins that shrank with every minute of contact. The destroyer's captain waited for the telltale signs: erratic depth changes, sudden speed shifts, a desperate rise. Those were not escape attempts. They were admissions. When the sonar contact surged upward, the order was immediate and calm. Weapons were ready. The geometry had been solved. The hunter had not chased. It had waited. The order to surface was not surrender. It was survival. Compressed air roared through ballast lines as the U-boat clawed upward. Men braced against bulkheads as the angle steepened. The hull groaned, then light seeped in through the conning tower hatch as the boat broke the surface. For a heartbeat, there was relief. Then gunfire. The destroyer was already turning in, weapons trained. Tracers stitched the water around the submarine. Splashes climbed the hull. The U-boat's deck gun crew never made it out. The bridge became a storm of steel and spray. The captain knew there was no second chance. No dive could be completed under that fire. No maneuver could outrun it. The order to abandon ship came quickly, not shouted, not panicked. Practical. Men scrambled topside as the destroyer closed, maintaining fire just long enough to prevent resistance, then easing as survivors entered the water. The U-boat listed, then settled, slipping beneath the Atlantic that had carried it for months. The engagement ended without drama. No final explosion. No triumphant signal. Just a boat gone and men in the sea. Rescue followed routine. The destroyer slowed, lifeboats thrown, lines extended. Survivors were pulled aboard, shivering, exhausted, silent. There were no speeches, no taunts, only numbers taken and injuries treated. Below the surface, the sonar contact faded completely. Only then did the escort captain mark the engagement complete. In debriefs later, the sequence would look straightforward: contact held, patterns tightened, surface forced, submarine lost. It would read like a checklist. For the U-boat crew, it felt nothing like that. They would remember the celebration, brief, human, understandable, and the quiet that followed. They would remember how silence had lied, how the absence of immediate retaliation had felt like safety. It was. The lesson spread quickly through both navies. Explosions did not end engagements, noise did not mean confusion, and confidence, once misplaced, could be fatal. By 1943, the Atlantic had chosen sides. Not by allegiance, but by method. Anti-submarine warfare matured into a system that rewarded discipline over aggression. Escorts learned that the worst mistake was to rush. The best weapon was continuity: hold contact, refine it, let the environment do the work. For submarines, the change was brutal. What once felt like initiative, a successful attack, now risked fixation. The moment of greatest confidence became the moment of greatest exposure. Hydrophones and sonar no longer danced around each other. One side listened continuously, the other ran out of places to hide. This was not about courage. It was about persistence. And persistence favored the ship that could stay above, breathe freely, and attack without limit. The German U-boat crew celebrated a kill because history had taught them to. Strike, disappear, reset. In 1943, that rhythm was broken. The hunter did not rush. The hunter did not lose contact. The hunter stayed below the noise and above the target. The engagement was not decided by the torpedo explosion, but by what followed it, by patience instead of panic, by tracking instead of searching. When the depth charges finally ended the fight, the outcome had been sealed minutes earlier. At the moment, the escort refused to celebrate and chose to listen instead. In the Atlantic, confidence had become dangerous. Silence had become suspect. And survival belonged to those who understood that the fight was never over just because something had sunk. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that stays quiet and keeps listening long after you think the battle has ended.